Honestly, at this point, I'm kind of considering this show to be sort of amazing. I was hoping episode 1 wasn't going to be a fluke and that the somehow mixture of all these different ideas, that half of which I normally would shun away from, it ended up impressing me, as I said in my first impressions. But honestly, this show is funny, it's charming, and it's ludicrous. And I think the author who wrote it, I think clearly understood that fact, which is why there's so much comedy backing these scenes. But in an odd sort of way, I like some of the more ridiculous ideas that they're going for in terms of keeping Nagi and Erica together, right? Because when you really think about it, should arranged marriages even be a thing anymore? No. And I love the fact that the characters even call it out, being like, in today's age, how stupid is it that they're even trying this? But if you do put yourself in the parents' point of view, it actually is a good idea to, at the very least, attempt to make this whole misunderstanding work out. The big thing is I don't think they would actually commit to it if they didn't have chemistry or a connection, or they just decided they couldn't be a couple. But when you look at it as you raised the wrong kid, of course you still look at them as your child because you can't spend 16 years and just because the blood doesn't match, consider it completely bullshit, right? I mean, otherwise adoption wouldn't be a thing. But when you do have your legit kid who shares so many characteristics, I mean, just look at her and just interacting with Nagi's parents. I mean, even if it was fantasy, just the kind of thuggish nature and the feistiness, you can just tell that that's the actual biological kid. And even from the quick glimpses of her own dad, I really feel like it matches Nagi's kind of cool, calm, and collected persona. And I love the fact that in terms of their own weird ways of making this work, if it could happen, it would make the most sense. Because one, you'd be able to spend just as much time with them and not have it be awkward. But at the same time, they very much, because they were raised on the opposite end of the spectrum, might end up, just meshing quite well. Of course, they keep the doors open for other things, like Nagi thinking he wants to go after his school crush and things like that. The sister plotline's still open. Though I do like the fact, I actually appreciated the sister more in this episode than I did in episode 1, because really we didn't get too much other than the kind of hints that she's reading incest manga, but it's okay that you're not actually my brother. But I like the fact that she seemingly isn't bitter towards her, but more so seems a little concerned, but almost there's this slight hint of happiness that she has a sister, right? So I do like the fact that this episode just kind of keeps it more grounded, even though it does have outlandish fantasies. And still, the entire concept is absolutely absurd. But that's what makes, I think, the reaction so amazing. And the simple moments to this show, I think, go a long way. Like the fact that she was going to come over to his house, right? And the fact of the matter is, she was an hour late. And I thought it was just going to be one of those things. She's a rich girl who just doesn't give a shit, right? She doesn't value money because she has an unlimited amount of it. And instead, she was waiting outside for an hour because doesn't know what a doorbell is, because she's never had to do it. It's not like she was ignorant to the fact of, like, she recognizes, like, oh, I shouldn't have to touch a filthy doorbell. No, it's just like she didn't understand it, or she didn't sit down properly, and she thought their home was basically a tool shed, because when you look at her dog's house, I mean, literally, it's the size of his own place that he shares with his entire family. But I like how, despite there being those quirks and those gimmicks that you expect with the rich girl not understanding the commoner life, or you flip it around and him being blown away by just how amazing her life is, and him for a brief moment reconsidering if maybe marriage is actually a good thing if I could live like this, before collecting himself and being like, no, I don't love this girl, it's an entirely stupid concept. But I like how both of these characters aren't shallow, right? The fact that she's not disgruntled because she's eating commoner food. The fact is, she's just embarrassed and doesn't know how to respond to her real parents and say that she wants to spend time with them. I love how that during that entire situation, he's freaking out that this is a time bomb, that she's going to butt heads and we're going to have a gang war in the middle of this family-run restaurant. But instead, she was just simply didn't know how to respond and say, I want to get to know you, even though they were being so nice. And I love the fact that even though she doesn't understand, it may say technically rude remarks, it's not like she's trying to be hostile, she just doesn't get that lifestyle, but she wants to learn. And the fact that he, despite loving the shit that he's seeing in terms of the finances, it's not like he's so shallow that he's just like, I'm gonna marry her just because I could be rich. He makes jokes, but he's not like that shallow. And I love the fact that on both sides, you just kind of get chemistry already. And that's why when even discussing in the comments last week, I feel like these two are the most interesting, right? Even though they have these different plot points of will they, won't they, and, who likes who. Ultimately, the idea of this arranged marriage, it's very rootable despite it being coded in so much insanity that you would never believe yourself to want to commit to in the real world. Given that both characters push back against the marriage, and the fact that the more time they spend together, clearly they'll appreciate each other more as you have extra drama and comedy bits to keep it entertaining. It's hard not to say this is kind of amazing right now. I honestly was half expecting to see this episode and say episode 1 was a fluke and it was just somehow the first episode hooks you in, but the rest doesn't make sense. But honestly, this was even better than the first episode if you ask me. And I love the fact that, as insane as even the end of the episode is, with, Nagi's real father bringing them to a home that probably he bought with, pocket change, they're gonna live there together for 2 weeks. And he's like, take care of my daughter. My man is like already the greatest wingman, but he also recognizes that if, there's no chemistry, they probably wouldn't want to be forced some sort of a thing. But I imagine within those 2 weeks, despite it being probably a bundle of chaos, there is probably going to be genuine connections formed, and they'll probably have some sort of an agreement of well, I want to get to know my real parents, you want to get to know yours, so we'll keep on the facade for the time being just so we can get to know them, so that when we break their hearts, they're not going to disown us sort of a thing. But ultimately, obviously, they'll grow more and more connected, as there'll also be those other plot lines, as typically in harems and rom-coms, things like that. But honestly, episode 2 sold me more, and I was, even though confused about why I liked it as much as I did in episode 1, I think so many of us were still there's no way it can keep working out. And at the very least for me, I loved it. I mean, the comments were entertaining. Social media was entertaining. Everyone was like, what in the actual hell is this show? So many people not believing me in terms of how I was explaining what the episode was. But it absolutely was exactly that. And I saw more people come out saying, you know what? Bless this show for existing. Even though on paper I wouldn't normally like this. I do think it's also going to help that it is a 2-core, because these types of shows, I mean, the one and done season, either A, the studio has to cut out a lot of stuff that normally would pad it into being a little more meaty and full of substance, because obviously you want at the very least end it at a satisfying stopping point. But with 2 cores back to back, you can really kind of take your time and explore the smaller moments, whether they're funny, whether they're drama, whether they're slice of life, and, considered dry and boring to some people, but it just adds to the kind of progression of the relationship, right? So I'm excited. I actually am. Some people may disagree. They'll say it's not amazing, it's too early to tell, but with so many things that I would normally push back against, and I'm loving them so far, and I really don't have an issue right now, at the very least leaving episode 2. Episode 2 didn't have me raising an eyebrow. Episode 2 just had me laughing, thinking it was goofy, and I love the fact that seemingly the show is aware of the goofiness and uses it and almost wears it on its sleeve, so you never think it's being too serious for its own good. But thoughts if you have any, whether you're a fan of the source or if you're anime original like myself, what are you thinking? Are you going to keep on watching this insane roller coaster? Let me know. Be sure to leave a like if you enjoyed and subscribe if you're new around here. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.